All right, good morning, everyone. We'll get started here this morning, running just a couple minutes behind. I hope everyone is doing well this morning. It's great to see everyone out on this cool Sunday morning. I believe it's not as bad as it was last Sunday, but it feels good out there, doesn't it? Isn't it wonderful to have the change of the seasons that we get to enjoy here in LJ? We are going to look at Psalms 100 this morning. I believe that's where we were. And I hope you have your Bibles with me this morning. We got a lot of scriptures that we want to look at this morning that's in connection with Psalms 100. We know this chapter is a lot about thanksgiving. Giving thanks to the Lord. And I'm going to read this chapter from the ESV version. Does anyone have, I'm also going to read from the easy to read version. I want us to see the difference, but does anyone willing to read from a different version? Like New American Standard. Does anybody have a New American Standard in here?
I have American Standard.
Yes. Okay. All right, Harrison, will you read that when we get ready? The New American Standard. Psalms 100. Okay, Psalms 100, ESV. This is a psalm for giving thanks. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who has made us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. Now, this is the easy to read version. Anybody have a copy of this easy to read version? Anybody ever had a copy of this easy to read version? I love this easy to read. I don't even know if you can buy this anymore. I tried to buy a copy not too long ago and you can't hardly find it. But I love to go back to this easy to read version because regardless of what version that I read, there's some things that I come across with that I'm not sure what they're saying or I don't understand. But I go back here and it's like, this is like the hillbilly version. So I can relate to that very, very well. So it helps me to, Appalachian American, that's a good one too. So this right here is like gold to me. But this is the easy to read version. Earth, sing to me, sing to the Lord. Be happy as you serve the Lord. Come before the Lord with happy songs. Know that the Lord is God. He made us. We are his people. We are his sheep. Come into his city with songs of thanks. Come into his temple with songs of praise. Honor him and bless his name. The Lord is good. His love is forever. We can trust him forever and ever. All right, Harrison, read the New American Standard version for us, please. Thank you.
Tim?
Yes.
When you're as old as I am and you learn to quote from the King James Version, that one that you read, that easy to read, that's not the 100th Psalm to me.
It is different, isn't it?
Yeah, because you just normally quote it from King James.
Right.
And I don't have a King James, I'm not.
Well, and that's what it was growing up. I don't ever remember another version other than King James.
Yeah.
When I was growing up. Is it like that for y'all? Was you raised on the King James?
Yes.
I say raised on the King James, but that's the way it was.
But we used to quote a lot, in our little Bible classes, and this is one of the ones that you learned right away. But
Right.
the New King James does a good job with it.
And when you was talking about King James and growing up, that made me think of Miss Miller. And those of you who were here, you know who Miss Miller was. And she made us memorize. And I mean, and I want to triple underline exactly what King James said, because that's the way it was. And if we missed a word, we went back to the start. And that's how, I don't know what the right word, I want to say rigid, but she wasn't rigid, but that's how exactly how she wanted us to learn it. Because that was, somebody had their hand up. Ken?
Tim, many years ago, when I went to Avondale Church in Avondale, catered to the elders, when you served anything you did that you read from Scripture, you had to use King James. It didn't matter if that was your Bible or not. You just didn't serve it as you used King James.
Right. Yeah.
But that's all, that's passed now.
Right. Yeah. I think there's been a different way of thinking, I guess you could say.
See,
Well,
like
we
verse
don't-
1 in the King James, I still love it. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all you lands.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it is.
How can you improve on that? There's no way to improve on that, you know, regardless of what version that you have. But I don't do this as much as I should, but when I do study, I think it's good to look at different versions of the Bible, because I think that helps you kind of understand, you know, the translation that you choose to help you understand what you're studying. Okay, Psalms 100. When we read this, regardless of what version that we read, what do you get? What's the overall? I know it's Thanksgiving, but what's our attitude? What should our attitude be when we're reading those words from Psalms 100? How should we feel?
How blessed we are.
Be joyful.
Rejoicing, how blessed we are, those types of things, isn't it? As I was preparing this to talk about this morning, I read a commentary. He used this word, excitement. When we come and worship on Sundays, do you think about the word excitement when we come to church, when we come to worship? Nobody thinks. I really don't think about the word excitement.
No, but it isn't something that we have to do. It's something we get to do.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
That should make us feel good about it.
Right.
I started to say I cringe when I hear myself, and I do it from time to time. Say I have to get her.
Right.
When we
Yeah.
sing a song, we talk about what a privilege.
Right.
It's a privilege to get to be here, Mom. I gotta be there. I need to be in church. It's a privilege
It is a privilege.
to me.
We were talking this morning about at the courthouse about what a privilege it is to be here. I think a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this too, it's almost like sometimes this is something else that we have to do for the week. We have to go to work. We have to go to school. We have to pay bills. We have to buy groceries. We have to go to church. And sometimes church falls into those to-do lists. And it's very easy to do that. But, and it is kind of like this thumb here, the worshiping the Lord and going to what we always call church, going to worship, is much different than all these other things that we have to do. Josh?
Me personally, kind of like you said on the version of the Bible and interpretations, it's grammar, right? It's language. And so we struggle with language. And one of the things that I've always tried to do with my kids is we don't go to church. We are the church, so we go to worship. We don't go to church. And to me, it's a little thing, but I think it helps your mindset that you're, because worship and church are two different things. So, you know, I'm trying to use the right language to not muddy that water, I guess, or whatever, not make them feel like they have to go to church. You
Right.
are the church all the time, so it's a different attitude when you go to worship versus going to church. Because if you go to church, then you're going to leave church where you went.
Well, that's true. You're very true, and that's wise. Because when I was growing up, and I know there's others in here, that's what we did. It's time to go to church. Get dressed, it's time to go to church. But just like Josh said, we all know that. We are the church. We come to worship each Lord's Day. So that's what we're doing here this morning. I had a thought and it left me, Josh. I don't remember what it was now. But anyway, let's go back to this word excitement. And when we come to worship, we should be excited about coming to worship. When we worship, it's not or it shouldn't be a mundane thing that we go through. Growing up, my memory's slipping me with me again, but we had 2 songs, you know the routine, the 2 songs, the prayer, those type of things. And we get so mundane in those things that even though we are worshiping, are we truly getting out of our worship what we should be getting out of it? You know, and we try to change things up here from time to time. And I think it's good to do those things. I don't think it's good to do it every week. And sometimes when you're participating in the service, I really have to look at the bulletin to see when I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because I have this mindset of it's at a certain time period in part of the worship. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the importance. And I guess as I've gotten older, I realize the importance of why we are here every Sunday. It's not to put on this coat and put on our best clothes and have somewhere to go. And I've said this before in Bible class. Whatever that number says up here on the board, there's always one more here. And we know who that one is. That's God. He's here with us. And sometimes I think we forget that. But we are here to honor and glorify and give Him the praise that He deserves. But we're also here to be encouraged and lift us up. That's the purpose of the church. You know, He could have sent Jesus to this earth and done everything and not have the church. What kind of situation would we be in if we didn't have the church to come to every Sunday?
We'd be Gentiles.
Exactly. Yeah, but just think how it was during the pandemic. I hate to bring that up again, but how was it when you were at home watching it on streaming and you couldn't be here? I mean, there was times when we didn't meet on Sunday evening, and I know one Sunday evening in particular, Pam and I were getting ready to eat something for supper at about 5 till 6, and I told her, I said, wait a minute, it's time for worship. So, and that was just one time. So we get in a rut easily. And it seems like to do the right thing, to get in a habit to do the right thing is hard, but get in a habit to do the wrong thing is easy. You know, like sin. It's easy to do the wrong thing. It's pleasurable.
Tim, when worship service is over, if I think, well, I didn't get anything out of that, I need to think, what did I put into it?
Exactly.
If my mind is not in the right place, then I didn't get anything out of it. But if I'm doing what I should be doing, I got a lot out of it.
Exactly. You're exactly right. Okay, let's, any comments? Clay? You're exactly right. That's a good way to say it. We are not spectators. We're not, it's not like we go to a football game and we're watching football. Or we're going to a movie and we're sitting there watching it. We are spectators. We are part of this worship. There are men who lead the worship, but we are involved just like they are, even though they are leading the worship. But anyone else? Psalms 100, it's a chapter of thanksgiving. Starts out in verse 1. It says, shout joyfully to the Lord, or make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Isn't there occasions in life that we are joyful? those times of joy and happiness when someone gets married, someone has a child, someone graduates from high school or college. Those are joyous times, are they not? How do we feel when those things take place? We're happy. We're joyful. We're excited. But we get happy about those things because there is an accomplishment made. The wording here refers to like cheers that arise from a crowd when something important happens in our life. Now, and I guess, and I'm not a wordsmith, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is when we come and worship, it's not a mundane thing. Do we stand up and yell and scream like we're at a football game? Of course not. But we need to have something that comes from where? What does Jesus look at? Rather than on the outside, what does he look at? He looks at our heart. So when we come to worship, all our focus should be on him. Not those other things of paying bills and going to work and going to school and all those other things. Those things should be completely out of our minds. And I guess that's the point that he's trying to make here and I'm trying to make this morning. When we come and worship, we should be focused like a laser on lifting up God and worshiping and honoring him.
Tim,
Yes, ma'am.
I think it was 2 years ago during the summer series, Dan Chambers was here, did a lesson on worship. That would be worth going back and listening to. That was one of the best lessons. Because
Right.
it doesn't talk about what we always think of the acts of worship. He talks about our attitude and the way we should present ourselves. It was just a great lesson.
Right. Yeah, he did a great job. And have you ever read his book?
No, I
Um,
need to. I
The
know
title
you-
of that book, Ken has a copy of it, Churches in the Shape of Scripture. Did I say that correctly? By Dan Chambers. Excellent, excellent book. And he has a lot of great thoughts in that book. And so if you ever want to get a copy of that, I'm sure you could get it from Amazon.
Well, I think it changed my perspective because I would come to church and I think, okay, this week I read my Bible every day, I prayed, I sent a card, I called somebody, got my checklist, I'm ready to go.
Right.
And that had nothing to do with what my attitude should have been when I came.
Right. Exactly.
It was very impactful.
Well, and that's the point, I think, is what are we doing? How is our heart? Just like you said, we can go visit, we can write cards, we can do all that, we can make meals, we can do all these things that are good things that makes a difference in the lives of others. But where is our, and I'm pointing to this physical thing here, but where is our heart? What is our attitude? And my personal study, I've been studying this book about the life of Jesus. The standard bar is very high. And Mark and I were talking about this just the other day. Think, and you've heard this said before, we know that Jesus didn't sin. Everybody agrees with that, right? Jesus never sinned. We know that he never robbed a bank. We know that he didn't kill anybody. We know he didn't speed in his car. We know he didn't do those things. He never sinned. This is also what he didn't do. He never said a bad word. He never said a good word in a bad way. Now this one's really going to step on my toes. He never had a bad thought about anyone. So when we talk about doing all these things of writing cards and visiting and making meals and all those sort of things, those are all good. Those are all wonderful. Those are things that we should be doing. But what's inside? What's my attitude toward Clea? How do I look at Clea? How do I treat her? Now, I'm going to tell you that my toes hurt when I think about stuff like that. And even though that bar is way up here, what is our plan? What is our purpose? We're going to try our best to get there. We're not ever going to get there. None of us will ever be the type of person that get there. But that's what he expects us to be. And I know we've all read about the life of Jesus, and I'll get to it in just a second. I know we've all read about the life of Jesus and about the life that he lived, about the compassion that he had, the generosity he had, the love that he had, the grace that he has for us every day. But when we live our lives every day, that's a challenge. We can go through life and get up in the morning, do everything that we think we possibly can to be right, but we've still fallen short. In some way. We may not recognize that way, but we've all fallen short. So, doing all those things are good, and I guess that's what the point I'm trying to make is, when we come and worship, where is our heart? When we go to the grocery store on Tuesday mornings, and we go mail a package on Thursday, and we run into people, where is our heart? Rachel?
I think Jesus would have had a bad thought about the money changer when he got mad at doing that.
I don't think he, I'm not Jesus, obviously. I don't think he, well, he didn't sin. Yeah.
I've always looked at it in the fact it says he was tempted, just like we all
Absolutely.
are. But he never sinned. So for you to even be tempted, to me, the thought would have to leave out. I don't know, that's like a long study it is. But to me, the thought would have to go, but you don't act on it. Yeah,
Right.
That's what it says. You don't act on it.
Right.
Then you turn around and, like you did with Satan, turn around and use scripture to counteract it.
Right. Spence?
In that instance, where we're seeing Jesus with the money changers there, obviously, that struck a chord with him. But I think what we're seeing there is a case of what we see called in the New Testament righteous indignation. So Jesus, he sees this, something that's obviously wrong, something that shouldn't be happening, and he wants to make it right. He doesn't have that anger towards them in a way that's sinful, but rather in a way that he wants to, make things right. And there's a very big difference because you see, it's all about your intent, and Jesus' intent there. We see it also. I think of the scripture talking about, be angry but sin not. The anger itself is not the sin; it is, what you're going to do with it. And we're going to actually, kind of funny that comes up. We're going to talk a little bit about that in the lesson today. The different types of sin, that we see. So I'm anxious to kind of get into that a little deeper here in a bit.
Okay. And that could be a much deeper study. Certainly could. Okay, where was I? And again, let me just reiterate. I think when we worship, when we live our lives daily, that's the goal. That's the standard that we should seek. Let's go back and look at a couple verses here. And let's go back to Psalms chapter 32. Let's read a couple verses here that goes along with verse 1. Psalms 32 and come down to verse 11. It says, "Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, O righteous, and shout for joy, all you upright in heart." And then let's go back to chapter 95, verses 1 and 2. 95, 1 and 2. "O come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise to him with songs of praise. And then over in chapter 98, and come down to verse 4. It says, make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Break forth into joyous song and sing praises. So we can see from these verses that go along with the first verse in chapter of 100 that we still shout joyfully to the Lord. Goes back to this not having our worship and our life in such a mundane way. Does anybody in here sing as you're going down the road? Anybody sing in the shower? I do that. It's not recorded, but I do it. How do you feel when you're singing by yourself? You feel joyful. You feel happy. You sing those songs that uplift you. When we were talking with Willie Franklin about coming here, and we talked to him about worship, and he says, you know, when I get ready for worship on Sunday, he says, I get ready for worship on Monday morning. I listen to gospel music, I sing, I read my Bible and study every day. And that really struck a chord with me. We don't need to get ready for worship on Sunday morning, but really we should be doing that every day of our life. And then he tells us in verse 2 to serve the Lord with gladness. Let's go to Psalms 107. And let's go down to verses 21 and 22. Serve the Lord with gladness. Verse 21. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of man. And let them offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and tell of his deeds in songs of joy. In verse 21, it talks about, let's go back to read the first part. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love. How would you describe the word, or how would you define the word steadfast? Enduring. Never ending. I think about a boulder. None of us could go move a boulder by our own physical strength. You've seen these, and if you traveled around or hiked in the mountains around here, you've seen these gigantic boulders. Well, you can push on them all day, but they're not going to move. And that's what I think about when I think about the steadfast love of Jesus. It never moves. It's always there. And think about that when we mess up, when we sin, and we feel we carry that guilt around with us for a long time. But how does Jesus react to us? He always has that steadfast love, that boulder that never moves. He's always there for us. Let's go over to Acts chapter 2. Verses 46 and 47. Serving the Lord with gladness is just a mark of us, of God's people. Verse 46, and day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. Those first few words are very important. We are not Christians just on Sunday or Wednesday, but we are Christians every day, day by day, serving and being a member of God's family. Praising him, having favor with all the people that we come in contact every day. Let's go over to Ephesians chapter 2. Go down to verse 10. This is continuing to talk about our service to the Lord. Ephesians 2, verse 10. For we are his, excuse me. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So this is another verse that is encouraging us to serve. That he has made us, that we are his workmanship, and that God has prepared those things that we need to do. The next part of that chapter, come before God with joyful singing. When we sing, and not only when we sing, when we worship, but I'm thinking about when we talked about a minute ago about when we sing as we're going down the road. When we're singing those songs, especially when we're singing those gospel songs or those songs that we sing at church, even though it's on a Tuesday or it's a Friday morning and you're singing those songs to yourself, or maybe you hear something on the radio and you sing along with them, how does that make you feel?
Joyful.
It makes you feel joyful, even though it's not Sunday morning, even though it's not a time when we're all together. That makes us feel joyful. Doesn't that make you feel close to the Lord because you're singing these things to him, these songs? And it also makes me feel closer to the church because it also makes me think that I can't wait to get back to Sunday because I'm getting closer to that time. Holly?
So as we know, the Old Testament is full of types, and there were different sacrifices, and of course we know the animal sacrifices, so many of those were for the sins, but then there were the incense sacrifices that were the sweet smelling, and they were for thanksgiving to God, they were for praise to God, and they had a sweet aroma to God. And I think those sacrifices, the incense sacrifices, were a type for our singing today, a type for the praise and the thankfulness to God, whereas the animal sacrifices were more as a type for some of our prayers of asking for forgiveness and for our sins. Not all our prayers, but
Right.
some of them. But I think the incense were a type of the singing.
Right. Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point. And I think that kind of relates to what we were talking about the singing. And when we're alone or when we're by ourselves or when we're in a small group of people. I think that's a very good analogy for that. I certainly do. But it lifts us up. There's something about singing. Don't you agree? That lifts us up. There's nothing wrong with prayer. There's nothing wrong with preaching. Those are all good and important things, and they encourage us. But there's something about singing that encourages us, that builds us up, and that makes us joyful. So I think, like again, I'm not the Lord, I'm not God, but how would the worship be, think about this for a second, if we came and done everything that we're supposed to do, that we come and we pray and we listen to Jeremy speak and we take the Lord's Supper and we never sing a song? Have you thought about that? How would the worship be?
Wouldn't like it.
You wouldn't like it.
Wouldn't like it at all.
Yeah. It'd be different, wouldn't it? It would be very different. So I think all those things work together to uplift us, to encourage us, to build us up. Let's go to James chapter 5. Got just a few more minutes. James chapter 5, and we'll go down to verse 13. Is anyone among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing praise. So our singing should be cheerful. Doesn't mean that we yell and scream and stand up and all that sort of thing, but it builds us up. It encourages us. There's importance. There's a reason why singing is part of our worship. The next part of that chapter, know that the Lord himself is God, In Psalms chapter 46, let's go to that. Let's go back over to Psalms. I know we're jumping around quite a bit here. Psalms chapter 46, and that is verse 10. Psalms 46 and verse 10. Know that the Lord himself is God is part of that chapter. We know that the Lord is God, and this is what this verse tells us. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. And I'm going to share, we got just a few minutes. I'm going to share an illustration that we used this morning up on the square. And I think it fits here because this part of this verse, be still and know that I'm God. There is a story about a king, and the country that he ruled over, he asked all the people who are artists to draw or paint a picture that shows peace. He wanted a picture that is a peaceful surrounding. So there were thousands of paintings that were submitted. He got down to two choices. One of them was, and we've all longed to be here, there was mountains, fluffy white clouds, a little cabin by the stream, a little winding stream, smoke coming out of the chimney, rocking chairs on the front porch, those type of things. We all have seen those pictures. We all want to rent that place for the weekend because it's peaceful. Well, the other painting was also a picture of an outdoor scene. But it was an angry looking picture. Dark, stormy clouds. It was raining. There was a waterfall that was rushing. It was just a dark looking picture. So we had those two choices, and it was his to make. But he chose the picture that was of the angry picture. The dark, stormy clouds, the storms, the darkness of the colors that were used. And someone asked him, why did you choose that picture? And he said this. And there were some rocks. There was a rocky part of the mountain there. He says, if you look inside the crack of that rock, there is a mother bird sitting there with her baby chicks behind this waterfall. And she's just sitting there. Even though everything around her is angry, even though around her is stormy, it's a difficult time. This mother bird is sitting there peaceful with her baby chicks and felt safe. That's why he chose that picture. And it reminds me of this verse here. Be still and know that I am God. We talked this morning about going through some difficult, challenging times. We all go through those things. And I heard a person say one time, you're either getting ready to go through a difficult time, you're going through a difficult time, or you're coming out of a difficult time. And that's what I think of when I think about that illustration in this verse here. And that's another reason for this chapter of 100 here for us to be thankful for. Who do we lean on when the storms come? When those challenging times come? When we think that we're going through something in life and we see no end to it, no hope of it ever coming, but it does. Everything in this world, in this life is temporary. But that's what that makes me think of. Okay, we're going to run out of time here. But I guess the thing that I want to stress here is make sure that we all, and I'm talking to myself, that when we worship, we truly worship Him. And we're getting ready to do that in a few minutes. But not only that, in our day-to-day life. When we get up, and one of those mornings when we get out of the bed and stump our toe and it's just downhill from there. We've all had those days. Those are the days that we need to focus more on Him. And just stop the rain and just sit down and thank the Lord for the blessings that we have. I know we didn't get through the whole chapter, but I appreciate all the comments and thank you for being here this morning. Any other comments? Right,
I
thank
think
you.
when we're sad, sometimes we get, like, if we have a big experience, it's like people get involved in sports, you know, all I think about is sports, and when their team loses, when the Braves lose and they're out of the playoffs, we all get sad. It's just life, we all need to work, try to build up people, say, oh, well, there's another season, another time.
That's right.
Here, you know.
Well, and let me say this, and I agree with you. I agree with you. But I think as we get older, you know, there's a lot of things that come about in life that just don't matter.